What's going on, guys? It's your boy Slap Bum, and today we're back with another no BS review. You know, raw, unedited, no script. I just kind of talk about a tank. Now, the first tank the only tank we're talking about today is going to be the T72B. This was added after I stopped doing this series. The last one, you might remember, was like 9 months ago on the M1A2. So if you want to check that out, click on the top right-hand side of your screen right now. But let's get into it. First up is armor. The T72B has a mixture of composite armor and ERA bricks scattered about all over the tank. It makes it look really cool and iconic. I know you guys have probably seen a lot of footage from actual war with the T72 that looks just like this, a lot of ERA on it, bricks everywhere, hoping to disperse some RPGs or other tank shells that are made out of chemical munitions. Now, in game, how does that translate? For 9.7, this tank is very strong. There's a lot of tanks that have trouble penetrating it, especially if you get into a down tier. So anything that's 8.7, thinking about going against this upper front plate is a nightmare, especially the front of the turret. There's a lot of thick spots of composite. It's angled well, it's rounded. It's, you know, it's made to bounce shells. It is a T-Series tank to its fullest extent. And it really does a good job, especially with chemical munitions, lower tier vehicles like the APCs that might get a couple shots in that have good pen, but they need to hit weak spots. You know, the ERA bricks are going to help a little bit more for that. And when a helicopter shoots at it, if you're frontal and a helicopter ATGM hits you, as long as it's not a really advanced helicopter ATGM, depending on the spot, you can bounce some of those too. So overall, it's really protected. Keeps the crew safe. It's a cool looking tank. So armor wise, very good score. Very, very nice. That being said, doesn't really get down tiers all the time. It does get pulled into 10-3 games a lot. So those tanks aren't going to have as much of a trouble penning you. It shares the same weak spots with the other T-Series tanks, like the other T72, T64, and the T80s. Mangoes. Next up is armament. The T72 is armed with a 125mm smoothbore cannon, capable of firing mangoes, which are some of the best APFSDS rounds in the game, but also ATGMs. So you get a little mix of both. Most of the top tier Russian tanks actually have this ability because they all use the same gun roughly. But I love this gun. It is a really good sniping round. It's really good for close range engagements. It has a decent reload speed. It has a cool action on this tank where the top opens up and the shell casing pops out, so it's fun to look at too when you shoot in third person. But I mainly like this gun for how good it snipes. The projectile velocity is really good. You don't have to worry about the drop on the shell as much with this tank as, say, I mean, honestly, they all are pretty good at top tier, but this thing has some good kick, I guess, right? So it's got a good gun. And this segues into what I'm going to talk about with mobility. This tank's gun allows it to do whatever it wants virtually. It could snipe or it could brawl. It could have a mixture of both. It can shoot fast while you're on the move. It doesn't need to, you could be stationary. And then switching to ATGMs to deal with helicopters and lightly armored vehicles is a nice option to have. Also, the 125mm heat is one of the memeiest shells known to mankind. I have a couple videos that did pretty well in the past using not this tank in particular, but HE on the 125mm Russian cannons, and you could hit viewports and stuff. I don't know if it's still like that in the game, but you could hit a viewport and ignite their ammo, completely send them sky high, walk away laughing because you're using a 40mm pen HE shell with a lot of explosives in it. So gun gets a thumbs up from me too. I really, really enjoy it. Mobility is where my likeness of this tank starts to decline. As opposed to its brother, we'll call the T80s its brother, right? The T80s are go-karts with very, very close to the amount of armor this has, just way faster forward and reverse. The same gun too. So mobility on this tank is pretty slow. When you're trying to snipe from far away, it's probably the best bet because you can't reverse out of any situations. It has one reverse gear. It just does not go backwards well. So when you get into these brawling fights that you can get into and you can completely win, you have to remember that you cannot back out of the situation. So anything you push into, you can't back out. It's kind of like you ever see the lobster traps, where how they capture lobsters? They walk in and they can't get out because it's like a funnel, and they squeeze themselves through and then they can't get back out. So it's kind of like that. If you push too hard and you don't realize there's going to be multiple enemies in front of you, you push yourself into a bad spot, and you have no way of escaping unless you turn the entire tank around, because you'll be going backwards at 4 kph, which is really, really annoying. The other thing is all the reference footage you're watching right now is not a spaded tank. My tank is not spaded. I'm using the default rounds, and I'm still managing to do decent, but I would assume that the mobility gets a little bit better in a straight line forward. It's probably a little bit faster than this, so just keep that in mind. It's not going to be that slow when you get yours spaded, but it is definitely slow in reverse, and it's not as fast as the T80. It feels more sluggish, it feels heavier, it feels more of a big loaf to move around the map, and it's just something you got to worry about. Overall, I like the T72. I like the T72, the normal one, the A, and I like the B. I like a lot of the Russian top tier tanks, but this one in particular is very strong for 9.7. Of course, you have to deal with the up tiers, but it's a good backup for your T80 if you just unlock it. And it doesn't really lose effectiveness over time the way some other tanks in this game do. You can still do damage at top tier, it still gets the mangoes. As soon as it's fully upgraded, it can move decently fast, and the lineup at 9.7 is really, really nice. You have your option of either a BMP-2M, which is my favorite, or the BMP-3. You could bring another T64, and helicopters, IL-28, MiG-17, and you pick. It's very wide open what you can bring at 9.7, and it makes out a nice lineup. And this tank is just really enjoyable to play. I enjoyed it a lot, and I like it. For me to tell you guys how to play this tank, it has multiple different uses. Like I said, you can brawl with this, but you have to be careful about your mobility because you can't back out of situations. And you can snipe with this, which is my recommendation. When moving around the map, I would hope that you guys try to find defilades. This is a very small tank in terms of its height, so it can use a lot of small defilades, roads that have banks on the side where you can keep yourself in cover, hiding, and only exposing your turret, which is the strongest part of your tank. Usually these tanks die by getting hit underneath the side in between the tracks, and that's because there's a carousel of ammunition under there and it goes up like a tinderbox. There's only 3 crew, so you don't have a lot of options when it comes to that. Maybe there's 4 crew. I think there's only 3. But you don't have a lot of options in terms of when your side is exposed in this tank. So trying to keep a low profile, stay hidden, stay in the weeds, keep yourself down, you only expose your turret, try to make long distance engagements so it's harder for the enemies to hit your weak spots, and you will see that this tank really performs like a 10-0, if not a 10-3. Just depending on the mobility is I think that's the reason why it's not that high of a BR, and we already have the T80, which is a go-kart with a little bit less armor, but I'd rather have mobility. That's my playstyle. I think it's been a fun tank to play though, and I like the variety of it. You know, it feels like the T80. I played the T80 before I played this. The shell ejecting mechanism is cool. I like that feature on a lot of these tanks. It's got the log, so it's Soviet as Soviet can be. Really cool. It gets smoke shells or smoke grenades, so you can cover yourself up, and I believe it even gets ESS. No thermals on this is probably another reason why it's not higher up. It gets night vision, but we all know how night vision in this game works. It doesn't. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. These are meant to be short, about 10-minute videos with me of reviewing a tank using my veteran experience. It sounds weird saying that. Just talking about tank and how I think it plays, how I think about it, and giving you guys a no bullshit review. No fluff, cut it thin. Trim the fat. I need to trim the fat. Alright, well, I'll see you guys. Let me know if you liked it by leaving a like. What vehicles should I review next? Let me know in the comment section down below. Peace, y'all.